How was the lunch, everybody? Excellent. Can I see a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Good. Awesome. I also enjoyed. So we're going to carry right along because we have a really jam-packed afternoon. And again, we'll have some more time for networking. In just a few hours, we'll have a 30 minutes tea break. And then our main networking session will be in the evening from around 5:45 until 7:30. But next, we want to jump right in. A lot of you are really curious to learn more about sending money across borders, so cross-border payments. As we are all trying to do business, it's become increasingly easier and easier to find out ways to work on this and not have to pay so many fees. So let's hear from Mr. Sachin Maheshwari with Ripple. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello everyone, am I audible? Yeah. Good afternoon. I know everybody is having a lunch just now, so I will try my session, to make you all learn something from here, how Ripple is working in India and across the world, they are solving the problem of cross-border payments, right? So my name is Sachin. I'm a senior integration engineer where I've been working with various banks in India, Middle East, and Singapore to solve the problem of cross-border payments, right? The moment I say that I'm from Ripple and I'm working with banks in India, right, you must be having a thought, how it's possible, right? How we are working when the digital assets are not allowed by RBI, right? So I promise you, in this session, I'm going to talk how we are solving the problem of cross-border payments and working within a regulatory limits as defined by the Reserve Bank of India, and solving the problem of money, right? So Ripple was started with one vision, and the vision is, let me check if it is, yeah. The vision of Ripple is they want to transfer the money in the same way as the information is flowing over the network, right? Today, if you want to send an email, right, do you wait that the email should reach in 2 or 3 days and then you get the acknowledgement, okay, I've got your email? No, right? We are in a world where we have an internet, network of networks. Internet is nothing but a network of networks, right? And which is facilitating to send an email from India to US or any part of the world in a matter of seconds. And what Ripple identified that why the payments are not working in that way, why the cross-border payment is taking a time, right? If you want to transfer a money from US to India, is it so simple? You say click and it goes? No. Whenever I go to US, I always borrow money from my friend, I need some dollars, and it's very pain to transfer a money to him, right? So there is a lot of friction in the global payment system, which Ripple identified, and they try to work on that to solve that problem, and they are working. So Ripple is like working with all the various banks in India, in Singapore, and Middle East, and across the globe, where we are solving the problem, and we are trying to make the cross-border payments real-time and instant as possible. So let's see what are the global pains today, right? So I hope many of you might be from the, work from the MNCs, and you might have got the stock options. And when you get the stock options, you trade them in the US market, and then you want to convert your US dollars into your local money. You want to receive the money in your pocket, right? What you will do with the dollars? You need Indian rupee, right? Then what do? You fill up a wire transaction form, and after that you don't know where my transaction is actually. It takes 3 to 5 days to realize the money in your bank account. And in my previous organization, I was getting this stocks, I was trading them there, but it was very painful to know like what is the exchange rate being charged. Nothing was clear. It took sometimes more than a week to receive the money. And the another pain with the global payment system is millions of dollars has been trapped today, right? Every bank, if you were like, when I was trading like in the US, right? The bank has to keep some money with the banks in India if you want to transfer money. And if they want to deal in many fiat currencies, right? They need to open so many accounts today, right? And that is a problem where trillion of dollar has been trapped, and that is a problem which Ripple also identified, why we are having so much money being trapped there, right? And that's why the cross-border payments are pretty expensive. Next thing is they are unreliable, right? You don't know. You start the transaction, it goes over the network, via network, but you don't know what is happening. If there is any issue, I have been working with various banks in India, Middle East, and I know the pains of operations team, right? They have a hard time. If there is any failure, it takes almost more than 15 to 20 days to identify where the transaction has been failed, right? And would you like a system when you're sending an email out of 100, your 6 emails get failed? Probably you may lose your business, right? You may be writing an email to your client or investor, and if the email doesn't reach on time, you may lose a big business. And the same thing with the cross-border payment, and it's the money, right? We cannot leave even a 1 rupee coin, just get lost. Like we worry about the money and we care about the money, right? So, and how the architecture is today? There's a bank in the US which is having correspondent or liquidity provider, another bank, and then it trades and does a work with the bank in Philippines to transfer money. See, like this is how the architecture, and this is how we have a no single experience for the money today. We have an isolated network of banks through which the money is traveling, and that's why it is taking time and it's costly. The banks are making high cost. The banks have to charge a lot for cross-border payment because they are keeping a lot of money into their dormant accounts. They have to keep that money. And if they are dealing in 100 currencies, 100 accounts they are opening and keeping a lot of money there so that if the request comes from their user in that country, they can settle the transaction in that country. So these are the major pains which we identify. And what is the solution? And why the banks are keeping money? That is what the Chris Larsen identified a long time back. Why the banks are keeping your money? Because there is no trust, right? The banks are not trusting. Because if I want to transfer money to you, there should be some trust between me and you, right? Then only I can transfer the money. In the same way, there was no trust between the banks, and the cross-border payments are getting expensive, and they identify blockchain as a solution. Because blockchain provides a trust in a trustless network, right? It's open source, it's decentralized, nobody is the owner of the ledger, but everybody has a copy of the ledger. That's a power, right? Nobody controls the ledger, but everybody has a copy of the ledger. All the banks, they can trust the transaction which is written on the ledger basically, and that's why it is decentralized and widely used for the use cases where we want to build a trust. Correct? Now, what is the problem with that? So Ripple started, okay, we will build a blockchain-based solution, then we started going to the banks. So we directly work with the banks. And when we talked to the banks, way back, like 3 or 4 years back, then they started selling that, okay, blockchain is good, you are building a trust, right? But I don't want to keep my customer data on the public ledger because they don't want to have a customer data. So what they did is, Ripple built an interledger protocol seeing that problem. That they identified, okay, we will not keep your data, but we will provide an atomic settlement of funds across the ledgers of the bank so that these two banks can trust a transaction who are participating, and your data is being not kept on the public ledger. So that's how the ILP ledger was being invented, and this ILP protocol is being submitted to the open source community. And if you have any use case, try to read about it and build the interoperability between the blockchains too. So Xcurrent was a product which is being one of the atomic use case of ILP protocol, which does the atomic settlement of payments. And so Xcurrent is the product which we are implementing with all the banks in India, and it fulfills the regulatory limits of the Reserve Bank of India. It doesn't make a use of cryptocurrency. It makes a use of ILP protocol for the settlement of funds. And currently we are already live with the multiple banks in Middle East and India. Like we can take example, Kotak Bank we are working with Axis Bank, IndusInd Bank. These all are the banks which I have been participated in the Middle East, the Saudi British Bank, and there is a ARB Bank where I was implemented for the integration. And it was a big project. Like I did like 6 to 7 projects in last 1 year with all these banks. And we make the payment from Middle East to India within just 1 or 2 minutes, maximum 2 minutes. and doing a complete validity of the transaction. The AML checks are also happening. So if I take a Xcurrent use case, this is how it works. So we have the banks. We have the bank. You can assume the bank on the left-hand side is a Middle East bank, and the bank on the right-hand side is a bank in India. And how Xcurrent software facilitates the transaction over this ILB network? What they do is, the bank, the user of the bank says that I want to transfer 10,000 rupees to my parents in India. He will go to the bank. The bank internally will send a transaction over the Xcurrent. Xcurrent transaction will move over the RippleNet network to the other bank. They will do the verification. They will verify the complete details, whether the person belongs to AML or not, if the customer is having enough funds, and then only the transaction gets executed, and this all facilitation is done over the Xcurrent. And we are able to finish the transaction in maximum 2 minutes, where we are transferring this one, and all this is being live and working with the banks. So Xcurrent provides a transparency. The customer gets a notification, okay, this is the exchange rate has been charged, and his beneficiary received the payments through IMPS system immediately. And like, I really appreciate the kind of payment system which India has, like NPCI has done. I think no country has developed this. We are very fortunate and very ahead in the world of the payment system in India, right? I'm always excited, I do transaction IMPS, and through IMPS, like behind the scene, the Ripple integrates with the co-banking system, and then they do the transfer to the final beneficiary through IMPS. And all is being settled within 2 minutes, right? So with this Xcurrent, like this Xcurrent product, which is being running in the banks and live today, we solve that problem, the money is being getting, but we still don't solve the problem of liquidity, right? And this product doesn't make a use of cryptocurrency, so we don't solve the problem of liquidity with this, right? It's still the banks need to keep a lot of money here, but we solve the problem of transparency, we solve the problem of efficiency, and we solve the problem of speed with the Xcurrent software. Now, Xrabbit, so seeing that problem, like Xrabbit was released like 6 to 8 months back in Ripple. So there are some countries where the digital assets are widely accepted. So take an example where we have worked, US to Mexico. So what happens is, I was telling, right, banks needs to maintain a lot of liquidity, but using a digital asset and using a Xrabbit software, the bank doesn't need to maintain a liquidity upfront, and we are solving the problem of trust. So let's see that example. So assume that there is a Mexican guy who is working in the United States, and he says that, I want to transfer 20,000 Mexican pesos to someone in Mexico. He will go to the bank, and what the bank will do, the bank is integrated with the Xrabbit software. The bank, Xrabbit is going to communicate with the exchange, which is running in United States, and will say how much money or USD is needed to transfer 20,000 Mexican pesos to someone in Mexico, right? So what happens is, Xrabbit software does a real-time calculation, communicate with the exchange, gets the rate, do the conversion, and tells this is going to be debited from your account. Once the user says, okay, I am fine with this debit, the transaction gets triggered, and behind the scene, Xrabbit makes an exchange API call in the United States. There is a Bitstamp exchange, where it converts 100 USD, assume that 100 USDs are converted into the XRP tokens, digital asset. These tokens are being transmitted real time over the exchange into the Mexico. And on the Mexico exchange, these XRP tokens are again converted into the Mexican peso. And finally, this exchange makes an API call to the bank, and banks makes a final deposit. This all process happens over the 2 to 3 minutes, and in this complete process, these two banks are trusting each other without keeping a liquidity upfront. That is like the $10 million which has been trapped, right? We are trying to solve the liquidity problem with the Xrabbit product wherever the digital assets in the country are allowed. And in this use case, we saw that there was no requirement, the trust is being established, the transaction which was initiated by that guy for XRP conversion is being written on the XRP ledger. Both of them can verify, but they don't need to write the transaction details about their customer, right? So these are the two products, Xrabbit and Xcurrent, which is solving the cross-border payments. We are trying to make the cross-border payment as real time, as instantaneous, as possible with this. Now, this is how we are building a global network of banks. So every day we are onboarding a bank, we are working with the banks not in India, but across the globe, and we are building a complete network of banks, and that we call as a RippleNet network, where over the period of time, when this network becomes so huge, any bank in India, any bank anywhere who wants to transact will do the transaction as per the regulatory limits, and the money will be settled instantaneously, and try to reduce the liquidity upfront where the cryptocurrency requirements are meeting the regulations, right? So that is where the Ripple is working, and I've been working with the various banks, and I have a real-time experience. It's a great experience, solving these cross-border payment problem. And I was able to realize my use case, because when I was in my previous company was NetApp, where I used to get my stocks. And I always think, man, why this is taking 1 week and I don't know what is the exchange rate. Sometimes I used to fight with the bank, why you have charged this was the rate. But now seeing this use case, I was able to understand why it was taking 5 days, and now with Ripple, what is the change they're going to bring into the entire ecosystem of cross-border payments. And that's an amazing thing which we are doing, and I'm really proud of this, when I've been working with Ripple for more than a year, and it has been an exciting time and learning all the day. So why is the best choice? So Ripple and XRP are the two separate independent entities. XRP is open source. It is being maintained by a community. And Ripple is a fintech startup which is focusing to use all the possible, problems in the cross-border payment and solve the problem. And why they selected XRP? XRP because it takes 4 seconds to settle. We have XRP is running almost more than 192 validators, out of which 7 validators are being operated by running at Ripple premises, and more than 180 plus validators are running outside Ripple, which does the settlement of transaction, and with the less fees, and we are doing 1,500 transactions per second. And the XRP team might be working to improvise it every day. At this moment, I can say that we don't have so much of traffic also, like where we are doing so much of settlement of the transactions. But this is how the XRP is being the best digital choice for our XRapid use case, which I talked about, the conversion of money in a real time. So we all, as a Ripple, we are solving this problem. We are on demand. We are low cost, because if the banks are not going to keep money, think about next 5 years, if the XRapid gets popularized at many places, then why the banks are going to charge them money? Because they don't need to keep the liquidity upfront. Liquidity is a major problem, right? If you are keeping your money, you're giving your money to someone, you will expect the returns. The same way the banks are making cross-border payments expensive today. But if we solve those problems of cross-border, I think these will go away. No delays, elegant experience, single user experience. People get to know. Santander is a bank which is releasing out a mobile app where the people can see upfront, if I'm transferring money from UK to somewhere else, how much is being charged to me. And that's the kind of experience the banks are building using Ripple technology. At the end, I would like to say, it's all about digital assets plus Interledger. We are delivering an internet of value. We are trying to solve the problem of, cross-border payments. And I have and my closing notes, what I would like to say to the audience, you all are entrepreneurs or startup guys. You work for blockchain is a beautiful technology, but you need to identify a right use case and build a complete ecosystem. I have been a co-founder of 2 tech startups in the past, and I got failed, but failure is a learning, so don't scare. Failure is always a learning, is a success. And the person who gets success in the startup, they are the winners. So we are always successful in doing a startup. Like Ripple, try to identify a complete use case. Like they are focusing on cross-border payment, and they are targeting from every places, whether it's with liquidity, without liquidity. How can I work in India? How can I work with other countries? So they are global. So that's why Ripple is making a global presence. Build your product and solve the real pain, and I'm sure you will be success. And I wish a very best of luck to all the startup and entrepreneurs here. Thank you, everyone, for this.
Fantastic job. Thank you so much, Sachin. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have just a small schedule note and change. I just wanted to let you know. So we were meant to have Jonathan with Ledger Atlas talk about special crypto zones, but unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make it. So a last-minute change in the schedule. But if you do get a chance, Ledger Atlas is running some really incredible, innovative projects. So definitely check it out and get in touch with Akshay, and you can message Blockchain India if you want to connect with Jonathan. He's a fantastic mentor that's also been helping young entrepreneurs right here in Bangalore from his home base in the Philippines. So moving on then, we'll be bumping up Mr. David Casey to talk about the political economy of decentralization, so he'll be next. Then we'll have the Rising Stars of Crypto panel and the path ahead, and then we'll have the panel on future of work. So I'd like to call up my very good friend David Casey, who's come all the way from Oakland, pretty much all the way around the world, and he has an incredible project called Numundo. I'll let him tell you the details, but right now he's going to talk to us about the political economy of decentralization. David.
Thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for the organizers for inviting me here. It's beautiful to see a thriving blockchain ecosystem in India. So my name is David. I'm the CEO of Numundo, which I'll explain more about in a little while. Today, I will be talking about the political economy of decentralization. This is a city plan for a town here in India that's called Auroville. Has anyone been to Auroville or heard about it? A few of you. Amazing. So a lot of the principles that are being applied in Auroville today, I'll be speaking about. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the political consequences of centralization. This is an example in my home country, the United States of America. There was a confrontation about 2 years ago between a petrol company putting in a pipeline backed by US armed forces and a native indigenous tribe of the land, the Sioux, who were protecting both their water supply as well as a sacred burial ground. Another example I talk about a lot is in the Middle East. If you look around the Middle East today, there are many authoritarian regimes that I would say, when you have a dependency on one resource like petroleum, you run the risk of a centralized political system built around an economy dependent on that resource. And in the Middle East today, you have a number of regimes who do not respect community rights, basic liberties. And I don't need to go into it so much, but you can see through Iraq, Iran, et cetera, what happens when a nation is dependent on one economic resource before the democratic institutions are able to emerge. Here in India, the Bhopal disaster is one that I think is really relevant because there's two principles here, and arguably this was the largest industrial disaster in human history. And I won't go into it too much, but the Indian government said there was more than 500,000 injuries and somewhere between 5,000 and 20,000 deaths. And I would say a part of this is because you have a foreign or a company that comes in from outside the area of the local community, and their primary interest is not the well-being of that local community. It's profit. So that is one consequence of centralized political and economic system, is local communities lose their rights to what is happening inside of their area, and often it can result in these kinds of disasters. Another thing that I like to refer to is that this was also a result of an industrial agriculture system, large-scale centralized agriculture system that is dependent on pesticides and insecticides. So this is something I'll come back to throughout the presentation, is the humans' war against nature as if we were separate. But in the case of this disaster, we saw that the very same pesticides and insecticides that kill insects also are lethal to human beings. So next, I'll talk about power and energy. So I referred to Middle Eastern regimes and dependence on one source of energy, petrol, which requires generally large fossil fuel production plants and long transmission distance lines. And so you have a few inefficiencies here. One of them is just the energy lost in transmission when you move energy across long distances. And you can apply this to any industry, but with energy, it's specific to the distance. The actual energy is lost in the transmission line. You also have the vulnerability to government corruption, as well as vulnerability to things like natural disasters, blackouts, terrorist attacks, et cetera. So the more centralized an energy system is, you're going to run into these kinds of inefficiencies. And I'm not a decentralization maximalist. I just believe it's a very important element in having a true free democratic society. Let's see. Little help here with the clicker. Okay, so local autonomy. In order to really have a decentralized political economy and a decentralized culture, I believe that we really have to think about local control of the means of production. And when I say means of production, I'm really talking about the level of basic sustenance, so food, water, energy, et cetera. So what would each of these look like if our economy was decentralized? So food, it looks like local farmer networks, producer-consumer networks, short distances between where the producer is and where the consumer is, and that applies to all of these. And secondary uses, so cycling the waste, in this case it could be compost, kitchen scraps, food waste, et cetera, into secondary production cycles, and closing the loop, which is what you see in nature, but not what we have designed much of our production and consumption cycles around. With water, it's the same, looking at how we can catch water locally with rainwater catchment systems, wells, et cetera. Local filtration, and then again, secondary uses of water, for example, in local agriculture systems. With energy, I've already spoken about a little bit, but it would be distributed renewable energy grids. So again, the line between the producer and the consumer blurring, and the ability for us to directly share in a peer-to-peer way energy with each other. And this is really going to be enhanced, I believe, by blockchain-based networks and the Internet of Things, which can really allow us to share energy as well as other resources with each other directly as communities. And having these small microgrids also makes communities less vulnerable to things like blackouts. So talking about building materials, how can we build structures using either local, natural, available materials or industrial byproducts? So what we think of as waste from industries that we can plug back into the production cycle and build from. So I've seen actually buildings made of compressed plastic trash in blocks that's very cheap and available locally. So all of these have a common principle, which is the principle of permaculture design. How many are familiar with permaculture design? So basically, it's a design science that seeks to configure human economies and settlements in a way that can be sustained permanently and indefinitely without real dependence on outside inputs. And so really what we're talking about is how to create systems that take some of these principles of nature and design our communities and design our economic systems in a way that not only isn't dependent on outside inputs, but is regenerative in the sense that it's building the pools of natural capital, topsoil, water table, et cetera. So I believe that in order for a decentralized culture to emerge, we really need to think about infrastructure and the ownership of infrastructure. And you're wondering what this has to do with blockchain. I'll get there soon. Ownership and control of the means of production can really shape the outcome of how a society is organized. Centralized control of the infrastructure that runs our economy can lead to a centralized political system. Therefore, decentralization and community control of the basic infrastructure that we survive and we live on can lead to a more free democratic society. And I want to bring up one of my heroes, Mahatma Gandhi, here because he was one of, I think, the most interesting political economists of the 20th century. And he may have been idealistic, so am I. What he believed was in political decentralization as really a true path towards a healthy democracy, devolving the power, devolving the decision-making to the edges whenever possible. And in order to do that, he saw economic decentralization, or decentralization of the control of the means of production, as a necessary step, that it would be very difficult to decentralize politically if the economic means of production were centralized in a very few hands. So I won't get too deep into this because you are all much more experts than I am, but Gandhi's philosophies today have been implemented in Panchayati Raj. Am I saying it right? All right, so basically the devolution of decision-making power to the state, municipal, and village levels. Okay, you might have seen this slide before. So I want to bring up some trends that I'm noticing in the 20th century versus the 21st century in terms of technology. The 20th century was a century where one-to-many technologies dominated. In other words, one source going out to many, but not getting that feedback loop, not coming back. The 21st century will be defined by many-to-many networked technologies. So I'll start with communications. The 20th century was defined by television and radio. These are one-to-many technologies that enabled people like Stalin and Hitler to come to power and really leverage these technologies to centralize communications. The 21st century is coming to be defined by the internet, which is a many-to-many technology. Next, I'll talk about energy. So I've come back to this a little because I believe energy is really fundamental to all of this. The 20th century was defined by fossil fuel-based energy and nuclear energy. And often what you find in states dependent on nuclear energy is the implementation of the surveillance state, or the military industrial apparatus that needs to protect the nuclear industry due to its magnitude and potential for danger if it falls into the wrong hands. So the 21st century, I believe, will be defined by renewable energy, distributed microgrids, wind, solar, microhydro, et cetera, as well as micro producers being able to share directly with each other. So one really beautiful example that I'm already seeing today is electric car networks such as Tesla, where the drivers of these networks are able to upload their location of their garage onto an app, a location-based app, and Tesla drivers can now go to each other's garages and charge. And essentially, they're disintermediating gas stations and creating a peer-to-peer energy sharing network, while at the same time increasing the distance that you can drive an electric car across the United States. So they're actually literally expanding mile by mile the network of charging stations that you can use. So this is just one example of decentralized energy. And in terms of production, the 20th century was defined by large factories and vertical integrated systems. The 21st century, we have now 3D printing and other technologies that are allowing us all to be what I call prosumers, producer-consumers, and really being directly involved in the production process at a micro level. Lastly, finance. We've been talking about that a lot today. So banks, fiat currencies, private equity, investment banking, et cetera, are what define the 20th century. What I believe will define the 21st century of finance is blockchain technology and blockchain-based networks, digital currencies, various forms of crowdfunding and direct participation. I think one speaker mentioned today the ability to own a small piece of the Empire State Building. So like the tokenization of all resources and the ability of everyone anywhere in the world to participate in these financial systems, which were formerly only accessible to, let's say, private equity investors. And lastly, decentralized ownership and governance, new forms of corporate governance that are more open and will allow corporations to become more flat and less hierarchical. So I'm going to talk about the decentralization of ownership a little bit, and this is one of the things that I am most passionate about blockchain and its ability to bring to the world. And it is creating a new type of corporation that can really give value back to the people that are creating that value. So Airbnb, Uber, these network-based platforms really derive a lot of their value from the network effect, from all of the users joining early and using the platform and contributing to the value in that way, because the network effect compounds itself. The more users there are, the more valuable the platform becomes, the more users come onto the platform, et cetera. But these early users don't get rewarded for the value they bring at the beginning. So I think this will change. This will be a new type of company that has really interesting competitive advantages over a company like Amazon. So I was consulting with a company recently, which is a Chinese e-commerce blockchain-based company called GoJoy. And the way it's going viral in China right now, and the way they're doing that is they're giving tokens to every consumer who makes a purchase on the platform. And those tokens entitle that user to a proportion of 50% of the total profit of the platform, given back hourly. So essentially what they're doing is rewarding all of the users who adopt their platform early, and at the same time creating something that is akin to a universal basic income. And 1 minute? I don't think so. OK, so I'll go on. Towards a culture of decentralization. In order for a true culture of decentralization to emerge, we must create spaces that exist outside of centralized economic systems. When a human being enters such a space where different primitives apply, different fundamental truths, they come to believe that a different world is possible. And then maybe they're so inspired that they contribute towards building that different world. So that's really what Numundo is about. You can think of it as an experiment in the future of living. So Numundo literally means new world, and we have a network of 700 spaces around the world in over 100 countries. And these spaces are small communities, ashrams, eco-villages, et cetera, places like Oroville, which I mentioned. And all of them are doing in one or another way, prototyping what the future of living could look like. And they're sharing practices for self-sufficiency, sharing business models, sharing governance models, et cetera. And what all of them have in common is really prototyping how it could look like if our economy was decentralized in these very basic ways: food, water, energy, et cetera. And we're looking at another form of decentralization, which is allowing individuals, and especially people from the tech economy that can live and work from anywhere, to access our network of more than 700 spaces around the world and basically be at home and be in community and be able to sample this new decentralized lifestyle. And this is something that Jessica and I talk about a lot, which is basically being able to work, live, and be at home in different parts of the world. And it's something that I don't think was possible before in a way that it is becoming today. And I believe that it is only going to grow in the future as a trend, as the digital nomad culture grows, and as more and more workers are able to work remotely. So our network revolves around something we call the impact center, or the center of impact. And these are physical places like an ashram, like a small community, like a retreat center. We have 16 in India here. And basically, they're places you can go, you can work, you can live, and you can learn something. And they really focus on sustainable living, self-sufficiency, as well as personal development, wellness, and really like, how do we live the good life? How can we redesign our life to really live with more meaning and do what we're here to do on Earth? And I believe that's really part of the future of work and the future of living, is empowering people to have the space and the resources to be able to achieve that lifestyle with which they really feel they're truly living out their passions and their dreams. So one example, I mentioned Auroville here in India. Auroville is a community of 3,000 to 5,000, depending on the season. It is a collaboration between Indians and people from over 50 nations. And they're doing some really interesting research around building materials, around organic food, around self-sufficient energy generation, around water filtration, and really working on prototyping what the village of the future could look like. It's out in Pondicherry. It's a really interesting place. I was just there last week, and I strongly recommend to visit it if you're in that area. So we're building a global impact ecosystem of these spaces around the world that are working to hold that space of a decentralized economy. And really, I believe that we have choices. We have many choices to make, and every choice we make has an effect. And we have really two trends in the world right now. These decentralized technologies that I mentioned, blockchain being one of them, renewable energy, et cetera. And we also have a very strong trend towards centralization and surveillance states and authoritarian regimes around the world. And I believe at the key, and Gandhi said this too, really at the key of maintaining democracy and freedom is the ability to control and govern the means of production and be able to access and really understand and develop as individuals and communities our food systems, our water systems, our energy systems, and our financial systems. Thank you.
David, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and coming all the way to India to be here with us. And I would love you to give him one more really big hand. David knows what's happening.
Here you go.
You just can't even follow it. We could just close the conference there, I think. So, I mean, it's fantastic to talk about digital assets, blockchain. We get caught up on, the technical side of things, but this really puts the big picture on things, what it really is, what it boils down to that we're doing right now in this very room. So what we're doing now, the interactions you're having at this conference today, the conversations you're having, this is part of that picture that he showed. We have these two paths that we're looking at, and this technology is going to decide which one we're walking down. So thank you so much, David. So David was talking about, having freedom to move around, to be a nomad. I mean, we're lucky we hold the US passport. This is not a luxury for everyone. But of course, financial means to freedom is huge when we're talking about people being able to move freely and borderlessly around the world. So we're going to switch gears now with our crypto panel to talk about how people can achieve financial freedom, and people are experiencing this every day, finding new ways with the technologies we have and with digital assets to liberate themselves financially, because of course money is the key to a lot of freedoms in this world. So I would love to call up our next panel. We're really lucky. Again, we have people traveling from all over the world to be here to share their knowledge, and at such a crucial time in India. So we have our Rising Stars of Crypto panel and the path ahead. So I'm going to bring up first, and if guys, we can get the chairs. I forgot about the chairs. Unless they want to stand, maybe it's more engaging. We could get experimental here. We're free to stand. We don't have to sit. But yeah, bring up the chairs. We have Saurabh Arora of Starterum, and he'll tell you a little bit more about his startup. He's going to be moderating our panel today. And then I had a really interesting conversation with Edel Patel of Moodrex. He's going to be joining the panel as well. We had a Facebook Live chat the other day talking about some of these big talkers in the news. So Idil Patel, if he'll please come up. I saw him just a minute ago. Maybe they'll, oh, there he is, hey. And then Yeshu Agarwal with LCX. I hear you're from Liechtenstein. I really want to talk to you. I've never been there. That I'd really have no, I feel like I need to get on Wikipedia right now because I feel ignorant. So please do tell us what is happening in Liechtenstein. What's the blockchain scene there? Fantastic. Okay, and then finally, Sumit Gupta of CoinDCX. So we're going to have about 15 minutes discussion, then we'll take just a few questions at the end. So take it away, Saurabh.
We've got Sumit as well. Okay. We're the crypto guys, we keep our own chairs.
Always.
Okay, hey, good afternoon guys, and thank you all the panelists for joining us today. We have Edul from Mudrex, Sumit from CoinDCX, and Yeshu from Tradin. Previously, he used to work in LCX, and we're going to take a lot of comparative framework from Liechtenstein and India with Yeshu on board as well. So guys, I'll just quickly ask you to introduce yourself, and then we kickstart going into the meat of the panel.
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Edel from Mudrex. Mudrex is a platform that helps traders automate their trading without writing code. We launched sometime last year in September, October, got into Y Combinator, and since then have just grown very, very rapidly. Just a few weeks ago launched our second product called the Marketplace that helps you invest in third-party pro trader strategies. So yeah, feel free to drop in. And yeah, I hope you guys have an awesome India DApp Fest.
Hi guys, my name is Yeshu Agarwal. Previously, I was working on a Coinly venture. It was a cryptocurrency exchange aggregator where we were aggregating multiple exchanges in one place. So last year it got acquired by LCX. It was an acqui-hire offer. So then I started working with LCX. So there we were building security token exchange and also like merging this Coinly platform in their rebranding it or something. So now I'm working on a new venture called Tradin. It's like building a bridge between decentralized finance and centralized finance. So here we are like all your bank transactions, just imagine all your bank transactions will be on the blockchain. So something similar we are working on currently, yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Sumit, co-founder of CoinDCX. So to tell you more about CoinDCX platform, so we are one of its kind platform which connects the fragmented crypto ecosystem. So by that I mean that we will give you a single point of entry for any beginner, professional, or anyone in the between. Whatever you want to do in crypto, say buying crypto with INR, doing spot trading, margin trading. Very soon we are coming up with 2 different products. And then you can lend your crypto. So we are primarily a face for the retail crypto customers who can do trades. Then we launched in April 2018, and currently we are the biggest exchange in India, doing roughly $8 to $10 million of daily volume. Yeah, so I think if you guys want to know more about, you can check out the platform, and happy to discuss after the event.
Cool, so as you can see, we have a crypto trading heavy panel here. And let me open the stage by, we have seen this news which came out about 10 days before. And although we'll not go into deeper analysis of it, tomorrow there is a wonderful session sort of deconstructing what those regulations are. But 10 years in a jail, are you ready? So I mean, it's really stark contrast where we are looking at when this news came. So just share with us, where were you when you heard this news? Maybe you were taking a shower, or maybe you were sitting with your team, and how did you absorb that? And what was your initial reaction towards that? We know what is the FARD in the news or not. I think everyone in the audience also knows, but just tell us, what was your reaction when you heard it for the first time?
Yeah, so we were working on our daily stand-ups, and my friend just messaged me this link saying that अब तो आप जेल गए 10 साल के लिए. I obviously went back and said, okay, let me go through it, and then
Keep it close.
yeah, I obviously went back and said, let me go through it, deconstruct what's going on, what's not going on, and just in that meanwhile, I think everyone in our team got a message very similarly. अब तो तू गया जेल 10 साल के लिए. Obviously, now that we've gone through and we've read some of the nuances, most of which you guys will discuss next year, tomorrow, a lot of it is just hype, very much clickbaity things. I'm pretty sure there is no draft bill or something that's coming out that's serious. And there are obviously nuances as to what happens and in which circumstances are you going to go to jail for that long or not. Obviously, if you do money laundering, you will, but that's current rule anyways. So, yeah, so that was me.
Yeah, but I just want you to make this audience empathize with you, the kind of work which you do, the kind of industry which you are in, and what we have been listening about the regulations in India for the last 1.5 years or so, sort of a bloodbath joined together with regulatory hurdles. This is your day-to-day life, right? So, what was your reaction initially when you heard this thing?
So right now, after like 1.5 year of crypto bearish market and all these, it's regulations is a very hot topic in India right now. So I think we are pretty much used to it. So I think the day the news came out, I got 100+ messages on WhatsApp, right, from investors, from friends, from our users, not from my parents, thankfully, because they know it happens in crypto. But yeah, I mean, we got a lot of messages, and I think it was not, it was alarming, but not very, I mean, because such things happen in the media. People try to write some clickbaity articles, and then it gets viral. We have seen things in the past, and what we have learned is we should not believe unless it comes from a government source, official sources. Because then tomorrow, if someone writes an article saying anything, and we can't just believe it, right? So that is very important for everyone. Second thing is, this is a draft bill, right? It is not an act at the moment. It is a draft bill, and it will take some time. It will pass through the parliament and before it becomes an act. So it is a very initial phases. I am not very sure how much time it's going to take. What will the actual regulations be, bill be? But I think it's not. It's also very difficult to implement it practically, right? Anyone who buys and sells crypto will go in jail. I mean, I don't know if there are enough jails in India, right? so
I think one of the surprising thing for me was like 10 years. Wait, in India, there's a term of 10 years is also applicable for a rape. So when I heard the news, which is just mentioning the use of and you could be termed for 10 years, it's that my rational self kicked in and it said, this is absurd, this is not true.
That's why it got viral.
Yeah.
That's why it got viral, right? Because if you see the full line, it was from up to 10.
Yeah.
Right, and May.
Yeah, it's a piece of a shoddy journalism and nothing else. But tomorrow we have a session on this. Stay tuned, and some of really leading crypto lawyers of India are going to deconstruct that for you. But moving on, please help us also understand how has the traction of each of your companies have been. One, you are a trading platform. You have been worked with a trading platform which is based out of Liechtenstein, and you are an algo trading no-code tool or a platform/marketplace. So tell us about how's the traction going on so far.
Sure. So last year, just around the time that Sumit was launching CoinDCX, we were also building out an exchange. Post that news last year, we decided to pivot from focusing on retail audience more towards advanced traders. And since then, the only thing that we've seen is that the number of advanced traders who are wanting to do this have just kept on growing. What definitely went down in my opinion, and I think Sumit can give more flavor on that, is retail traders and just the ARM audience, guys who want to put in and invest 5,000, 8,000, 10,000, that number dropping slightly. But the pro traders or the traders who are doing algorithmic trading, that number has only grown. In fact, a lot of the guys that we spoke to now started to come in are guys who've been doing equity trading or a lot of trading in currencies and commodities, and those guys have been interested in the opportunities that are available in this market.
Can you give us some North Star metrics of your company?
So for us, users tend to do a lot of strategy creation, backtesting, trading and then moving out and going out live. Just this month, our trading volume has almost doubled what it was last month. Traders ended up doing about 30,000 back tests on our platform. I don't know how familiar that number is, but a back test is when someone tests out their strategies and then launches it live. And 30,000 back tests effectively is that people have tested historical data over roughly about 1,500 years worth of data. And that number is 5x'd since January, and January was when we were very young and growing. So all of those numbers have grown, and this is not only numbers that we see from outside, but also from people in India trading. We're a more global platform, getting traders from all over the world, but the story is true across the world, not only in the US, but also traders of India coming more and more on the platform and doing slightly more sophisticated trading. So in my opinion, the pro traders have grown significantly, and that's true when you also look at Bitcoin transaction volumes, the number of wallet addresses created, all proxy numbers kind of sort of continue to say that same story. Pro traders are growing, retail audience in India definitely, so we'll be able to give a better flavor. But
What would you think, Sumit?
Sure. So that's a very interesting question, because when we launched, the market started to fall down, right? Bitcoin was at 19,000, 20,000, and then dropped to 3,000, few hundreds, right? So what we saw that, and right from the start, we had this belief that we had to build something which will bring retail people on board, right? And till date, we whatever products we built so far, for example, even if it's trading, lending, or buying crypto with INR, everything is built keeping those people in mind. On CoinDCX, even you can buy a Bitcoin worth ₹10, right? Any platform will not allow you to do that, right? So all the platforms were made with that thought in mind, that how can we allow retail people as well as professionals to trade, and that's how we have built our model, right? So I have, my thought process here is institutional investors definitely increased, but retail people have also increased, right?
Some North
And
Star metrics from your company?
Sure, I'll share that with you. And what is better here in this case is what now people have seen the bear market, right? So sensible investors have increased. People understand the risk of investing, unlike December 2017, where people were just investing blindly. So I think that was the time when Bitcoin price went down, people were aware that, okay, it can also go down. Otherwise, everyone's like, put 1 lakh rupees right now, it go 10 lakh rupees, and once year. So I think this was important, and now we see a lot more people getting aware about what crypto is. A lot of events happening internationally as well as in India. Now people are talking about crypto. So this is important.
True, I just want to push for North Star metrics. We have a lot more to cover.
Sure. So in terms of the metrics, we have currently 60,000 plus users on the platform. We have been growing, I think in the last 3-4 months, more than 100% month on month. So right now the volume is around $8 million daily or $10 million daily. It varies depending upon the volatility in the market.
Awesome. And Yeshu, would you can you speak on behalf of LCX at that in the same last year, how the LCX would have grown?
Sure. So my experience in Liechtenstein is like, the thing which surprised me is their prime minister also supporting the projects, crypto projects. So when
Actually, I wanted to keep you on the right side so that both of them tell about the Indian scene, and then we bring the perspective of Liechtenstein to see how different is it, the geographies.
Okay.
But please go ahead.
so in Liechtenstein is like there are lots of regulations is there, like already government is also doing something, lots of things in crypto industry. So also there is a bank Frick, which they are allowing users to buy cryptocurrencies, like institutional grade investors. So like I believe this is like next Malta, even reputed country, like AAA ratings.
Would you have some metrics to share, like what kind of usage was there?
They do trading in billions, so you can imagine.
Is
like
it more than CoinDCX?
They're more like institutional grade investors.
Okay. Interesting. So another thing which I was reading in one of the articles, and I was quite surprised, I didn't really notice until I read this number. The Indian VC investment in the crypto space is about $5.5 million, and that's it. Whereas the worldwide, it's it's plus upwards of $2 billion plus. So in the looking at what regulatory hurdles which we are all facing, and then FUD news is once in a while, how has your fundraising efforts have met? Can you share your fundraising efforts, or where have you been on the fundraising side?
Sure.
Or share sort of give us a reflection of your conversations with the VC world as well.
Sure. I think regulatory hurdle is one of the major challenges that comes in when we go out and talk to people. It essentially is either out of their thesis or not required, but then there are obviously individuals out there who truly believe in the kind of product that you're building and what you are building and how it's scaling up. And that's when, and once those people get aligned, they are very more than happy to help us. So, for example, we raised a small seed round sometime last year from some of the best VC, some of the best angels in India. There was Anupam Mittal from Shadi.com, Nitin Kamath from Encrypt, sorry, not Nitin Kamath, Nitin from Encrypt, and a whole bunch of other guys who helped us in that angel round. Then in January, we got selected for Y Combinator, which is, I think, the Harvard of startup accelerators or something like that.
Sure.
So that was the second round that we did. And we are now, with that money, we are now just focused on building our user base, growing traction, so that we can then go out and raise at some point in time significantly more. Obviously, with regulations in place, you have to build structures so that it's more aligned to raise money, and it helps out that way. So that's how we've also structured our company so that it's headquartered out of the US. The India entity is a subsidiary, so that it helps us not only run the business here, but also attract capital when required.
So you're a US company and India subsidiary? Yes, yes. And yours,
Yeah.
Sumit?
So first of all, I think the number would be higher than $5.5 million because a lot of that is not recorded, right? People don't disclose if they have invested in crypto startups. But I think our experience was we have raised our first round in May 2018, 1 month after the launch. And we are very lucky and glad to have good names like Bain Capital Ventures based out of US, one of the well-known crypto VC firms, and then Utsav Somani from AngelList, Sanjay Mehta from Mehta Ventures. There are 5 more angel investors we have. So in terms of funding, it was a good journey, and I think it is difficult to raise funds in India if you are especially in the crypto domain, because VCs do not look at it very positively. They generally want to safeguard themselves because ultimately they are not the one taking final calls. I mean, they have some thesis, and I think a lot of money will come in this industry once it gets regulated. But until that time, there is going to be some hard time raising VC funds, institutional funds.
Interesting. I'll also, along with this, invite anyone from the audience if they would like to ask any questions.
Yeah, we'll have time just for maybe about
And
2 if...
While you're thinking who is going to come, tell us about hiring as well, man. How is the hiring has it been easy? And what are you paying your employees in? Are you paying them in crypto or are you paying them in fiat?
So I would like to answer this question, right? So we are comfortable paying anything, right? If they want in crypto, Bitcoins, Ethereum, Ripple, anything they want.
But
right?
if I'm going to take it in crypto, how will I go and eat my cheeseburgers?
We have fiat to crypto channel, right? So everything is on the platform. You can convert that crypto to fiat on the platform. But it's open. But in terms of hiring, what your original question was, it is challenging. Very few people are, comfortable taking that risk coming to an industry which is unregulated, especially senior folks, right? So that is a bit challenging, yeah.
Okay, we have a question here, and if we can be as brief as possible so we can fit a few.
Thanks, guys, for doing this. This is Naveen from Standard Meta. Because you're all in the trading space, I want you to understand what the prime brokerage model for this space looks like, and have you seen any improvements on custody chain from, like, for institutions, and how does that work at this level?
Yeah. So I think there are a whole bunch of guys, not in India, but abroad, that's doing prime brokerage and supporting custody as well as trading across exchanges. But mostly, most of them typically just look at institutional folks. So prime brokerage is a growing field. I haven't seen examples great in India, but in the US, there are quite a few.
So I would like to add something. So if you talk about Coin26 business model, we are a retail broker. So just like Prime Broker, we are not for institutions, we are for retail. So we are a retail broker. So similar business model, focusing on retail people. That's what we do.
Okay, we have time for just one more. Okay, sir. This will be the last question, and then we'll wrap.
Thank you for the insights. I'm Varun Sethi, and I'm a student, I would say, of blockchain technology. The question is, all three of you stated that the news about 10 years in jail is a FUD. What is your go-to strategy if that news is true?
Great question.
Good question. So we have done the restructuring in a manner that it does not impact the business. So we have shifted the base outside India.
Pack your bags.
Same here, yeah.
Yes.
See you in Liechtenstein.
Yeah, I think I'll get you in touch with my lawyer. This is not something that I essentially have knowledge about. Not the right thing to say. Yeah, good sales pitch.
Okay, on that note.
Thank you so much, the panelists. We'll move on to our next session. Jessica?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Idil, Yashu, Sumit, and Surab. Don't worry, guys. I have some friends some anarchist friends that can help you out. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe David will host you in Costa Rica. Thank you so much. All right, wow, some really lively discussion. It's getting really interesting talking about crypto here. I think this is the most interesting crypto discussions that I've seen traveling around the world, going to different conferences. So next up, we have a fantastic speaker, our sponsor, Matic. To be quite honest, I hadn't really heard too much because, as you know, there's so many projects going on, but everyone is talking about scalability, scalability, scalability. What are we going to do? Matic definitely has the answer to that, and also is fantastic ecosystem builder here, and was a great mentor for our youngsters at the hackathon. Not all youngsters, actually. We had a good age mix. So we're going to bring you now Matic Network and the rise of the Indian dApps. They're a really interesting case because they're one of the few offices that's based here, although they could be anywhere in the world. These guys are international. They have backing from Binance, from Coinbase, so they could have their base anywhere in the world, but they chose to be right here in India, and they're actually in Mumbai. So I would like to bring up our next speaker, Sandeep Nelwal, to talk to us about the rise of Indian dApps. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Just a second. Okay, so I am Sandeep Nalwal. I am the co-founder and COO at Matic Network, and I am here to present to you guys about Matic Network and what our vision is for Indian blockchain ecosystem. So, of late, I'm very sure that most of you people would have heard about Matic, especially due to the things happening in the market and all that stuff. But I wanted to take you guys through the journey of the overall industry and how Matic came along and what we think is the future.